Welcome to our channel, where we explore true crime stories, unsolved mysteries, and the hidden darkness within the human soul. Today, we will dive into a horrifying case that once shook America to its Korea murderer, who left behind a legacy of fear and terror that no one could ever forget. But before we begin this haunting journey, if you're a fan of crime, mystery, and chilling true stories, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future episodes. Your support is the greatest motivation for us to continue bringing you the most gripping and high-quality content. Now, let's begin the story of the killer in the shadows, a man who spread fear and turned America's quiet streets into the stage for his gruesome crimes. The autumn of 2003 was meant to be a season of golden hues and tranquil transitions in the quaint, seemingly untouched town of Oakhaven, nestled deep within the Pacific Northwest. Its charming main street, lined with independent bookstores and artisanal coffee shops, hummed with a predictable rhythm of life. Children's laughter echoed from the town square, and the scent of pine and brewing coffee was a comforting constant. Oakhaven was the kind of place people moved to escape the frenetic pace of city life, a sanctuary where doors were often left unlocked and neighbors knew each other by name. That illusion of security shattered with the discovery of Evelyn Reed. Evelyn, a beloved, if somewhat reclusive, librarian known for her fierce intellect and penchant for vintage mysteries, was found on a crisp Tuesday morning, 2 weeks into October. Her neighbor, a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Gable, had grown concerned when Evelyn hadn't collected her morning paper or responded to a cheerful wave across their shared fence. A quick, uneasy knock on Evelyn's front door, which stood slightly ajar, revealed the unspeakable. Detective Marcus Thorne, a man whose weary eyes held the weight of too many years on the force, but whose mind remained as sharp as a freshly honed blade, was the first homicide detective on the scene. The Oakhaven Police Department, accustomed to minor property disputes and the occasional bar brawl, was ill-equipped for a crime of this magnitude. Marcus, on the other hand, had seen his fair share of darkness in his previous stint in Seattle, a past he'd hoped to leave behind in the move to Oakhaven 5 years prior. Evelyn Reed lay in her living room, amidst an overturned armchair and scattered books, her usually neat silver hair fanned out on the antique rug. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle beyond the initial skirmish. The cause of death was immediately apparent, a single, precise stab wound to the heart. What struck Marcus, however, was not the brutality, but the chilling sense of deliberateness, the almost surgical precision of the act. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, stared blankly at the ceiling, yet there was a peculiar absence of terror in them, almost as if she hadn't seen her killer. The scene was meticulously processed by the few available officers and a state forensics team that arrived an hour later. No weapon was found. No fingerprints, save for Evelyn's own and those of Mrs. Gable, who had unwittingly contaminated the scene in her shock. The house hadn't been ransacked. Valuable antiques and a small collection of rare books remained untouched. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It felt personal, yet utterly impersonal at the same time. "It's not a crime of passion, Chief," Marcus stated later that day to Chief Miller, a burly man whose face was a roadmap of stress. No signs of sexual assault. No obvious motive like revenge or a lover's quarrel. Evelyn Reed lived a quiet life. Who would do this? Chief Miller rubbed his temples. Maybe a drifter? Someone passing through? Possible, Marcus conceded, though his gut told him otherwise. But a drifter usually leaves more of a mess, takes something, or has a clear, desperate motive. This felt clean. Too clean. The news of Evelyn Reed's murder ripped through Oakhaven like a wildfire. The initial shock quickly mutated into a creeping fear. Residents, who once greeted each other with open smiles, now eyed strangers with suspicion. Doors that had always been open were now bolted and chained. The comforting rhythm of town life faltered, replaced by a low thrum of anxiety. Marcus and his small team delved into Evelyn's life, interviewing her colleagues at the library, her limited circle of friends, and everyone she might have encountered. They found nothing. Evelyn Reed was, by all accounts, a perfectly ordinary, kind woman. No enemies, no dark secrets. Her life was an open book, albeit one without any dramatic plot twists. The case quickly stalled, a gaping wound in the town's psyche. Then, 3 weeks later, the wound was torn open again. The second victim was Mark Peterson, a young, ambitious high school history teacher, known for his charismatic lectures and his passion for local Oak Haven folklore. Mark was found in his own home, a quaint 2-story house on the outskirts of town, less than 2 miles from Evelyn Reed's residence. The discovery was made by his distraught girlfriend, Sarah Jensen, who had grown worried when Mark didn't answer her calls. The scene was eerily similar to Evelyn's, a horrifying echo that sent a chill down Marcus's spine. No forced entry, no signs of struggle beyond what seemed like a brief, futile attempt at self-defense. Mark, like Evelyn, had been killed with a single, precise stab wound to the chest. Again, no weapon, no fingerprints, nothing stolen. It's him, Detective Sarah Chan, Marcus's new, bright-eyed partner, breathed, her voice barely a whisper, as she surveyed Mark Peterson's living room. Sarah had joined the Oak Haven force only a year ago, fresh out of the academy, and this was her first real taste of pure, unadulterated evil. It has to be the same person. Marcus nodded grimly, his jaw tight. The MO is identical. Our drifter theory just went out the window. He scanned the room, looking for any deviation, any new piece of the puzzle. Mark Peterson's apartment was far more lived in than Evelyn's, filled with stacks of books, a well-loved guitar in the corner, and a scattering of notes for his upcoming classes. A framed photograph on a bookshelf caught Marcus's eye. Mark smiling widely with his students on a field trip. A life, vibrant and full of promise, snuffed out. The forensic team, now better prepared, scoured every inch. This time, they found something. Tucked beneath an overturned throw pillow easily missed was a small, intricately carved wooden bird, about an inch long. It was made of dark, almost black wood, polished smooth, with tiny, delicate wings. It wasn't a toy. Felt symbolic, a morbid calling card. "What is this?" Chun asked, holding up the evidence bag with tweezers. Marcus stared at it, a knot tightening in his stomach. "Our killer left us a present." The discovery of the wooden bird was the first concrete link between the victims, solidifying the terrifying truth. Oak Haven had a serial killer. The news spread like a plague, transforming the town from a peaceful haven into a fortress of fear. Children were no longer allowed to play outside unsupervised. Businesses saw a sharp decline in evening customers. Halloween, usually a festive community event, was canceled, leaving a palpable sense of loss and fear in its wake. The local newspaper, the Oak Haven Gazette, struggled to cover the escalating crisis, their headlines growing increasingly stark. "Terror in Oak Haven, second victim found. Police baffled as killer remains at large." Chief Miller officially requested assistance from the FBI. A team was dispatched, led by the renowned profiler, Agent Lena Hansen, a woman with a reputation for her uncanny ability to delve into the darkest corners of the criminal mind. Her arrival brought a flicker of hope, but also a stark realization of the gravity of the situation. Oak Haven was no longer just a small town. It was a crime scene, a hunting ground. Agent Hansen, a woman in her late 40s with keen, intelligent eyes and an aura of quiet authority, spent days meticulously reviewing the case files, visiting the crime scenes, and interviewing Marcus and Chun. She walked through Evelyn Reed's silent home, then Mark Peterson's, a thoughtful frown etched on her face. "No forced entry," she mused, observing the unlocked back door of Mark's house. Both victims seemed to have known their assailant, or at least let them in without suspicion. Or they were skilled at gaining entry unnoticed. "We checked every window, every lock," Marcus said, frustrated. "No signs of tampering. It's like they just walked in." Hansen nodded. "Or they were invited in. Or they simply appear non-threatening. The lack of struggle points to a quick, decisive attack. The precise stab wound. This isn't random rage. This is controlled, deliberate. Our killer is organized." She turned the wooden bird over in her gloved hand. "This is significant. A signature. Not for boasting, but for psychological gratification. What does it represent to him? A bird, Chin offered. Freedom? A messenger, perhaps. Or a shadow. A silent observer, always present, never seen. Hansen countered, her gaze distant as if she were peering into an unseen world. Both victims were respected members of the community. Evelyn, a keeper of knowledge. Mark, a dispenser of it. Is there a connection here beyond their public roles? They searched for any shared traits. Both lived alone. Both were single, though Mark had a girlfriend. Both were involved in community life, but not overtly social. Evelyn frequented the local farmers market. Mark played in a casual weekend soccer league. Nothing. He's good, Marcus admitted, feeling the immense weight of the town's fear on his shoulders. Too good. We have nothing on him. No witnesses, no camera footage, no leads. Agent Hansen looked at him, her expression serious. He's not just good, detective. He's patient. He's careful. And he's escalating. The gap between the first and second murder was 3 weeks. I'd be surprised if the next one takes that long. He's building confidence, enjoying the chaos he's created. He likes the fear, the way it changes the fabric of a community. Marcus felt a cold dread seep into his bones. The killer wasn't just taking lives. He was stealing the peace of Oakhaven, piece by agonizing piece. He was weaving a web of terror, and they were all caught in its threads. The golden autumn had turned to a bleak, gray winter of the soul, and the shadow of the unseen killer loomed larger with each passing day. The first 2 scars on Oakhaven were just the beginning. Agent Hansen's prediction proved chillingly accurate. Less than 2 weeks after Mark Peterson's murder, the killer struck again, and this time, the victim was someone everyone in Oakhaven knew, Martha Thorne. Martha, a vibrant, outspoken florist, was a staple of Main Street. Her shop, Martha's Blossoms, was a riot of color and fragrance, a cheerful landmark. She was a single mother, raising 2 teenage children, David and Emily, after her husband's untimely death 5 years prior. Her loss sent a fresh wave of despair through the community, turning the fear into a suffocating blanket of grief and anger. The discovery was made by Emily, who came home from school to find her mother in the back room of their attached home, amidst wilting roses and scattered petals. The scene was almost identical to the previous 2. No forced entry, a single precise stab wound, no weapon, nothing stolen. And, chillingly, another small, intricately carved wooden bird left near the body, a silent, mocking testament to the killer's presence. Marcus Thorne, whose last name was a coincidence to Martha's, felt the case clawing at his insides. The personal connection, however distant, amplified the pressure. He saw the faces of David and Emily, their lives irrevocably altered, and a cold fury settled in his stomach. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a personal vendetta against a phantom. The FBI task force, now fully deployed, set up a command center in the Old Town Hall. Oakhaven was flooded with federal agents, their presence a stark reminder of the escalating horror. Agent Hansen and Marcus worked tirelessly, sleep becoming a luxury they couldn't afford. The town, once so trusting, was now a labyrinth of locked doors and suspicious glances. People avoided eye contact on the streets, walked in groups, and hurried home before dusk. 3 victims, all seemingly unrelated, Hansen reviewed, pacing the corkboard covered with photographs, timelines, and profiles. Evelyn, a librarian. Mark, a teacher. Martha, a florist. What do they have in common? They're all respected, visible members of the community, but not overtly powerful. Not rich. Not politically connected. Chun pointed to a new map of Oakhaven, where the victims' homes were marked. Their locations are spread out, but within a reasonable radius. All residential, not public places. All killed in their homes. He's bold enough to enter their homes, but not audacious enough to confront them publicly, Marcus observed. He's precise, controlled. He doesn't want a prolonged struggle. He wants quick, silent kills. Agent Hansen tapped her pen against her chin. The wooden birds, they're all the same. Hand-carved, Someone with a meticulous nature, a hobby, perhaps. We've put out an alert to local woodcarvers, but so far, nothing. They began to develop a comprehensive profile. Our killer is likely male, Hansen stated. Strong enough to overpower, yet subtle enough to gain entry. Organized, intelligent, meticulous. He stalks his victims, learns their routines. The lack of forensic evidence suggests he's careful about leaving traces, possibly wearing gloves, covering his tracks. He finds a way into their homes without force, indicating he might be charismatic enough to gain trust, or cunning enough to exploit a momentary lapse in security. But what's the motive? Marcus pressed. Why them? Why Oakhaven? That's the million-dollar question, detective. This isn't about material gain. It's about power, control, and perhaps a twisted sense of justice or a delusion, Hansen replied. He enjoys the fear he creates, the chaos. He's asserting his dominance over the community. He's the puppet master, and Oakhaven is his stage. The media descended upon Oakhaven like vultures. National news channels broadcasted live from Main Street, sensationalizing every detail. The killer was dubbed the Shadow Weaver by a reporter, a name that perfectly captured his elusive, terrifying presence. The nickname stuck, painting an even more sinister image in the minds of the terrified residents. False leads flooded the police station. Every stranger, every recluse, every disgruntled former employee became a suspect. Marcus and Chun chased down countless dead ends, their exhaustion growing with each fruitless endeavor. The pressure was immense. Chief Miller was being lambasted by the press and politicians, demanding answers that simply didn't exist. Weeks turned into a month. The community held candlelight vigils, mournful gatherings that only amplified the collective grief and helplessness. David and Emily Thorne, now under the care of an aunt, were ghosts of their former selves, their laughter replaced by a hollow silence. Marcus felt their pain deeply, driving him further into the abyss of the investigation. One night, poring over crime scene photos for the 100th time, Marcus noticed something. It was so subtle, so innocuous, he'd dismissed it before. In Evelyn Reed's living room, amidst her scattered books, there was a copy of an old, obscure collection of Pacific Northwest folklore, Whispers of the Emerald Forest. Mark Peterson, the history teacher, had a well-worn copy of the same book on his bedside table, next to his class notes. And Martha Thorne's shop, a week before her murder, had featured a special display of native plants, accompanied by a small, hand-painted sign referencing an ancient local legend from Whispers of the Emerald Forest. Marcus froze. He knew the book. He'd bought a copy himself when he first moved to Oakhaven, intrigued by the local legends. It was a collection of obscure regional myths, many of them concerning forest spirits, hidden pathways, and the delicate balance between nature and civilization. He grabbed the book from his desk, flipping through the pages. Hansen, Chun, get in here. When they arrived, he pointed to the book. This is the connection. Not the book itself, but something within it. Hansen took the book, her eyes scanning the table of contents. What are you thinking, detective? All three of them had a connection to this book, or at least its themes, Marcus explained, his mind racing. Evelyn, the librarian, would obviously have it. Mark, the history teacher who specialized in local folklore. Martha, the florist, referencing local legends in her display. It's too specific to be a coincidence. They painstakingly reviewed the victims' lives again, this time with the book as a lens. They found that Evelyn had recently cataloged a rare first edition of Whispers of the Emerald Forest, donated to the library. Mark had taught a special module on regional myths, specifically referencing tales from the book. And Martha had even given a presentation at the local community center about the botanical lore in the book, linking it to the flowers she sold. It's not that they had the book, Chun realized, a spark of understanding in her eyes. It's that they engaged with its content. They brought its stories, its themes, into their public lives. Hansen's face lit up with a grim understanding. And our killer, the Shadow Weaver, uses the motif of the wooden bird. Birds are often messengers in folklore, or symbols of freedom, spirits of the forest. The legends in this book. They delved into the book's narratives. Many stories spoke of ancient guardians of the forest, spirits who protected the delicate balance of nature, often exacting swift, merciless justice upon those who disrupted it. One particular legend, the Weaver of Whispers, detailed a silent, unseen entity that would observe those who spoke ill of the forest or misused its gifts, eventually taking them away, leaving behind a small, carved bird as a warning. "He's not just a serial killer," Marcus muttered, a new, horrifying realization dawning. "He's a zealot. He thinks he's a guardian, an enforcer of some twisted, self-righteous code derived from these legends. He's chosen these people because, in his deluded mind, they've somehow misused or disrespected the knowledge from this book or the natural world it represents," Hansen confirmed, her voice low. "Perhaps they weren't reverent enough. Perhaps they commercialized it. He's not just killing, he's sending a message. And that message is getting louder." The breakthrough was significant, but it also brought a terrifying clarity. They weren't just hunting a killer. They were hunting someone deeply entrenched in a personal, ideological fantasy. This made him even more dangerous, more unpredictable, driven by a warped sense of divine mission. Suddenly, the vague, random patterns of the Shadow Weaver's victims began to coalesce into a chillingly coherent picture. He wasn't targeting based on personal vendettas, but based on a warped interpretation of their public actions. The lack of terror in Evelyn's eyes, as Marcus had first observed, might not have been a lack of fear, but a moment of sudden, bewildered recognition, a realization of why she was being targeted, even if she couldn't name her assailant. "He's watching Oakhaven, all of Oakhaven," Hansen concluded, her voice grave. "He's part of it, yet separate. He's observing, judging. And he will strike again, not when we expect it, but when he believes someone has committed another transgression against his forest code." The pressure intensified exponentially. They now had a psychological framework for the killer, a motive, however deranged. But they still had no name, no face, no real leads on who this Shadow Weaver might be. The small, peaceful town of Oakhaven was still under siege, trapped in a web of fear woven by a silent, judgmental figure, patiently waiting for his next victim, his next message. The shadows of Oakhaven were deepening, and the light of hope seemed to dim with each passing day. The breakthrough with Whispers of the Emerald Forest galvanized the task force, injecting a much-needed sense of direction into the otherwise floundering investigation. The FBI, led by Agent Hansen, deployed a strategy to immerse themselves in the local lore, combing through community records, social media, and local group memberships for anyone exhibiting an unusual or obsessive interest in the book or its themes. They searched for individuals who might see themselves as a guardian of Oakhaven's natural heritage, someone who felt a profound, almost spiritual connection to the land and its ancient stories. The search was exhaustive, narrowing down a list of hundreds to a few dozen individuals who had either purchased multiple copies of the book, frequently commented on online forums about its deeper meanings, or were known to be avid enthusiasts of local folklore and environmentalism, perhaps with an extremist bent. Marcus and Chun focused on those with any history of reclusiveness, social awkwardness, or unaddressed grievances. One name kept surfacing in various tangential ways: Arthur Finch. Arthur Finch was a man in his late 40s, unremarkable in appearance, with a receding hairline and perpetually anxious eyes. He worked as a data entry clerk for the Oakhaven Municipal Archives, a job that suited his quiet, methodical nature. He lived alone in a small, meticulously kept house on the edge of town, bordering a dense patch of forest. He was known in certain circles as an ardent amateur naturalist and a self-proclaimed historian of forgotten Oakhaven, often writing verbose, somewhat rambling letters to the editor about the importance of preserving the town's natural beauty and ancient history. He was seen as eccentric, perhaps a bit of a bore, but harmless. However, a deeper dive into Arthur's past revealed a pattern of increasing frustration and bitterness. He had actively campaigned against several local developments, vehemently opposing a new shopping center and a proposed bike path that would cut through a small wooded area he considered sacred. He had verbally accosted Evelyn Reed at a library board meeting when she suggested modernizing the local history section. He had sent angry emails to Mark Peterson's school, criticizing his superficial teaching of local legends, arguing that Mark failed to convey the true reverence required. And just months before, he had a heated public argument with Martha Thorne, accusing her of commercializing the sacred flora by selling rare native plants without proper respect for their spiritual significance. He knew them, Marcus said, laying out Arthur Finch's file on the table, a chilling sense of certainty settling in. He didn't just know them, he disliked them. He felt they transgressed against his code. The pattern fits the psychological profile, Agent Hansen confirmed, her gaze fixed on Arthur's photograph. The organized nature, the precision, the delusion of being a self-appointed guardian. His job at the archives would give him access to information, a deep understanding of local history, and an outlet for his meticulous nature. The task force moved cautiously. They couldn't just arrest him based on a profile and a tenuous connection to a book. They needed evidence. They placed Arthur Finch under intense surveillance. His daily routine was almost mind-numbingly predictable. Work, grocery store, home, occasionally a solitary walk in the woods. He interacted with no one beyond the necessities. He owned a small, well-equipped workshop in his backyard, where he spent hours alone, a detail that resonated with the hand-carved wooden birds. One evening, undercover agents observed Arthur making a peculiar delivery. He walked to the edge of the forest behind his house and carefully placed a small, dark object at the base of a particularly ancient oak tree. It was too far for visual confirmation, but the motion was deliberate, almost ritualistic. A few hours later, under the cover of darkness, Marcus and Chen, along with a forensics team, approached the tree. Tucked into a crevice, almost completely hidden, they found a small, leather-bound journal. Inside, written in neat, cramped handwriting, were chilling entries detailing Arthur's observations of the victims, his justifications for their transgressions, and cryptic references to the Weaver of Whispers and the purification of Oakhaven. He described Evelyn Reed's blasphemous disregard for the true knowledge, Mark Peterson's superficial mockery of sacred tales, and Martha Thorne's profane exploitation of nature's bounty. In the back of the journal, tucked between the pages, were sketches, detailed, almost anatomical sketches of the human heart, and alongside them, precise diagrams for carving small wooden birds, identical to the ones left at the crime scenes. "We have him," Marcus breathed, the weight of the past months momentarily lifting, replaced by a surge of adrenaline and a deep sense of horror. The phantom had a name. The arrest of Arthur Finch was swift and clinical. He offered no resistance, almost as if he had been expecting them, a strange, serene look on his face. When Marcus looked into his eyes, there was no malice, no rage, only a chilling, calm conviction. He truly believed he was righteous. The search of his home and workshop yielded a treasure trove of evidence. In his workshop, hidden beneath a pile of wood shavings, they found the tools used to carve the birds, along with a stash of the dark, almost black wood, clearly sourced from a local, protected species. A hidden compartment in his closet contained a blood-stained, razor-sharp hunting knife, meticulously cleaned, but with microscopic traces of DNA that would later be matched to all 3 victims. There were also detailed maps of Oakhaven, with victims' homes marked, and notes on their routines. The confession, when it came, was delivered with the same chilling calm. Arthur Finch spoke of his deep love for Oakhaven, his reverence for its ancient forests, and the legends contained in Whispers of the Emerald Forest. He saw himself as the last true guardian, the only one who understood the sacred balance. He believed Evelyn, Mark, and Martha had betrayed that balance, desecrated the knowledge, and mocked the spirits of the land. He was simply enacting justice, fulfilling the prophecy of the Weaver of Whispers. He expressed no remorse, only a quiet satisfaction at having cleansed Oakhaven. The revelation of Arthur Finch as the Shadow Weaver sent shockwaves through the community, almost as profound as the murders themselves. The mild-mannered, eccentric archivist, a man who had blended seamlessly into the background, was the monster who had terrorized them. It was a stark reminder that evil often lurks not in obvious darkness, but in the mundane, in the seemingly harmless corners of everyday life. The trial was brief but intense. Arthur Finch's defense team attempted an insanity plea, but his meticulous planning, his clear motive, however delusional, and his calm demeanor undermined it. He was convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Oakhaven slowly began the long, arduous process of healing. The fear gradually receded, but the scars remained. The town had lost its innocence, its naive belief in perpetual safety. Doors remained locked, and the memory of the wooden birds, silent and symbolic, continued to haunt the collective consciousness. Detective Marcus Thorne, though weary, felt a profound sense of closure. He had faced the darkness, identified it, and brought it to justice. He watched the autumn leaves fall, no longer seeing them as a harbinger of dread, but as a reminder of nature's relentless cycle of renewal. He knew that evil would always exist, but so too would the tireless efforts of those who stood against it. The Shadow Weaver was gone, but the lessons he left behind, about vigilance, community, and the fragile nature of peace, would forever be etched into the heart of Oakhaven. The town had been scarred, but it had also endured, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unspeakable terror.